Hello everyone, this is Bassam Dally. I'm a program co-chair for the 40th International Symposium on Combustion, which will be held in Milan. This presentation was prepared by myself and my co-chair, Professor Jose Torero. What we will do in this, we will try to explain some changes that we did to the submission of the papers and the way they're going to be handled. So why did we need the change? The drivers for change is to promote inclusiveness, to have more papers involved. We're anticipating a larger number of submissions as time come by, and hence we wanted to accommodate all of these papers while also maintaining the quality of the review process, which I know is important to every author and Combustion Institute member. We also wanted to maintain and grow the percentage of accepted papers. Currently it stands around anywhere between 38 and 40%. Without sort of cramming the sessions to have lots of papers in. We intended to also broaden the scope to also look at impact and mitigations of combustion. And we needed to look at slightly different way by which industry contributions are considered in the symposium to maximize the benefit, increase the reach, and hopefully the benefits of our community and what they can offer the industry. So what are the main changes, especially for papers, is that we now going to have two tracks. One, we're going to go oral presentation track, or OPP, and one is the poster presentation paper, which is the PPP. Basically, these are exactly the same papers, except one is going to be presented orally, and the other one is going to be presented in a poster format. The rationale behind this is you want to maintain the quality of OPP review process, because if we have to, for example, review 1,700 papers within a very short period, ultimately the review process is going to suffer. So also we wanted to increase the number of papers accepted without increasing the number of sessions and cramming the program. We don't want to go beyond 10 or 11 sessions. So this way then we're spreading our community more and more, and we're not having the intended benefits out of the conference or the symposium that we run. When you submit your paper, you have the opportunity to indicate your preference in either the oral presentation or the poster presentation. And you will know within 3 weeks which presentation mode your paper will be considered for. Poster paper presentations will have the dedicated spot in the program with no other activities at this time. We're anticipating 40 to 50 papers will be presented per day, and then we'll present it in an ample space where you have roughly between 1.5 and 2 hours to explain your poster to others. Both OPP and PPP will be asked to submit 20 minutes video presentation of their paper, which will be made available online for delegates. OPP will, per normal, have their 20 minutes slot to present their paper. PPP papers or poster papers will be handled by the proceeding editors and will not be identified in the proceeding as such. All papers will be the same as those presented in the 40th Symposium on Combustion, and then will also be published in the proceeding as per usual. Here's a bit of summary between sort of a traditional, if you want, or what happened in the 39th Symposium in Vancouver, which is in the column in the middle, and in the one on the right is the 40th, the International Symposium on Combustion. So let's start one by one. Number of oral presentation is roughly going to be the same as last symposium, no difference in there. Except in this symposium, we're going to also accept between 150 and 200 papers, and we're going to present them in a poster format. I want to emphasize again that the quality of both papers will be exactly the same. This is not a compromise on the quality. This is basically trying to accommodate more good quality papers in the symposium. In terms of presenting students, waived fees, doesn't matter, it was before and will be here. Doesn't matter which format the paper is presented, students will not pay registration fees for the symposium. There will be session shares the same way as before, 2 per session for the poster presentation as well as for the oral presentation. In terms of distinguished paper award, we'll maintain the same way as in the 30th, where we'll have 1 paper per colloquium. It doesn't matter in which format it has been presented. Time for presentation, in the past it was 20 minutes for the oral presentation, and that will be maintained. while for the poster presentation it will be roughly 2 hours where you'll be able to present your poster. I know that these posters will be up all day, not just during this session, but this session is when you may be expected to be next to your poster to explain your results. As I mentioned before, recorded videos will be expected for each one of the papers and will be posted online. So if anybody missed a presentation, they should be able to view it online if you are registered to the conference. The acceptance letter will basically say the same. It doesn't matter if it's OPP and PPP. It simply would say invited to present paper. Presenter name and paper title will appear in the program like any other way. Work in progress poster will stay exactly the same. No difference as before. You will still be able to submit WRPP. They will be in different floor, and they will be signed appropriately. So there's no confusion between the poster presentation and the work in progress presentation. The proceeding review, usually as it was, the OPP after acceptance. Now, for the PPP, they're going to go straight to the Pro-C editors. For the OPP, they have to go through the normal process, and then after acceptance, they also go to the Proceed editors, as was stipulated by Elsevier. As I mentioned also, the appearance in the Pro-C will be exactly the same and no distinction between these papers. Space was an issue in the past when this was held, and then we ensuring that there's ample space to present these papers. We can have large posters, and we will print them ourselves. Authors will only need to supply the digital file. Here's some timelines for how we're going to handle things. On the 4th of December, as you see in here, all papers will be submitted. We have we have appointed 60 members, what we call initial review committee. Those will help us decide if the paper is going to go into the OPP track or the PPP track. And then from there, everything else follows. As you could see here, the review. There's 2 different ways to be reviewed, and eventually sort of with the date, and see here for the PPPs, by the 5th of May, you will have the results. And for the OPP, it'll be a little bit earlier, about 29th of March. But remember that your OPP paper will also need to go to the proceeding editor for consideration as well. Another thing we're doing in the first stage, which is the roughly first 3 weeks or 23 days, is that we also going to have what's called disc reject. Basically, papers that will never make it, papers that we think is weak, papers that don't fit the format, and so on, will be rejected there and then. And again, by the 27th of December, you will hear the results of this initial stage. I'll now go a little bit further on the details of how this is going to be handled, but this is the overall picture. So these are the dates in the table format. Submission deadlines the 4th. Disc assessment will finish 22nd, and then we notify the authors by the 27th. Oral presentation decision is 29th of March, and then poster paper presentations will be notified by the 5th of May. Work in progress will be slightly after, so if you decide to put some of your work in there as work in progress, you will have the opportunity to do so. So how do we decide on presentation style? We have developed a document which is available online. There's a link of it later on. As I said, we established an initial review committee. There's 60 experienced TI members to help us out. Each paper will have 2 members of this committee to recommend to us, to the program co-chairs, on 3 things. If the paper should be disc rejected, if the paper going to be an OPP track, or is the paper going to go into the PPT track. By the way, in CNF, for example, 40% of papers are rejected without review. We're not expecting this number, but at least papers that we don't think will ever make it will be excluded from the start. And again, this committee can help us doing that. In terms of the OPP track, it will be reviewed as per normal. We have the 13 colloquiums plus the other, and the other is basically any paper from those in the colloquium and who are have an author or co-author in the paper will be handled separately on Colloquium 40. The PPP track, it's going to go to the proceeding editors for the review to happen. So in terms of the disk reject, these are the four questions we're going to ask the committee to consider. And they're going to give us a number, and based on this number, a decision will be made, accept for review or disk reject. I want to emphasize, eventually, all of this is going to be reviewed by us as program co-chairs, and this committee can only recommend. Two of them are going to be recommend this. So you can see here the criteria, does it fit the scope and the format. Scope implying, is this about combustion? Is this about sort of what we have defined as the scope of this particular conference? And the format, of course, the length of the paper and the way it's structured is important, that it follows what we have specified. Novelty is going to be a very important aspect, and what sort of new valuable insights this paper brings. And also quality, and I've mentioned this before, and we need that the results according to these people is actually is with required quality. And then the outcomes actually are of real value, that it's worthy of our kind. So based on this, we're going to basically, the assessment in here and the review best judgment of the paper quality and suitability to the Combustion Symposium, we want to try and make this decision about accept for review or disk reject. In terms of PPP, I mentioned before there's a document online that you could go on to read. I took some extract from it in here. So in terms of PPP, sort of the paper is deemed to have a potential adding value to the community through information provided in a physical form or of a poster, as well as in one-on-one level discussion. Paper relies on significant background information that needed to be explained before the outcomes and results can be clearly presented. The background information is deemed to add value to the outcomes and results. Sometimes within 20 minutes, you're really struggling to also explain all what you need to explain, as well as show the results and the discussion. The paper is part of a broader set of work, needs to be contextualized before the outcomes and results can be clearly presented, and a broader set of work is deemed to add value to the outcomes and results. Paper provides novel results, but relies on well-known, previously reported procedures, and results do not challenge these methods and procedures. And of course, an author's preference can be taken into account. In terms of the oral presentation, the paper is deemed to have potential of adding value to the community through room audience level discussion. In other words, the presentation style matters. A presentation can focus on outcomes and results without requiring a lot of extensive background information. The paper approaches the subject in a manner that is different to other related work, and therefore contextual information is not deemed to be essential for the presentation, and paper focuses on outcomes and results that challenge well-known, previously reported methods and procedures, and of course the author's preference. So we want sort of to generate as much discussion as we can. It doesn't reduce the value of the other paper, it's just basically where the preference we get as a community, much bigger benefits of attending the symposium and listening to the presentation. So here again is four questions and plus comments of how we're going to choose. So this conference has a theme. We wanted the oral presentations to emphasize the theme. Doesn't mean that other papers are not valid. It's just basically a preference. And also we're going to look at in which value sort of, there's a paper reporting a new experimental setup, computational models and theory. Now you could be using established methods, and you have used it in many papers in the past. We're just trying to put to the oral presentation something that is sort of much newer in a way and more sort of groundbreaking. And you could see the rest, insights and interpretation that challenge the prevailing understanding of a particular phenomena or field, that focuses on outcomes and results without requiring the inclusive, extensive background, and that presentation format of this paper must generate discussion. And this is the whole idea of sitting in a room and being able to ask questions and have discussions. And of course, we want this to be justified by the authors. So in here, again, the recommendation will be either an oral presentation or poster presentation. And again, it will be based on three things: above assessment, author's preference, and the reviewer best judgment of the most suitable presentation format. I re-emphasize that these two members of the initial review committee will recommend to us, and eventually we will make the decision. So what colloquium? We structured the colloquium under 4 different headings. One is combustion fundamentals, and the main contribution is focused on the fundamental understanding of the combustion processes involved. The second is on combustion research tool, and here you'll see there's 2. One is on the experiment and one is on the computational. And again, the main contribution is focused on the tools themselves, used to better understand the combustion process involved. The third we call applications, and here focused on applications of the combustion process involved. And the fourth is combustion impact and mitigation. At the start I said it is part of our role to look at what impact combustion having and how it can be mitigated. And we were doing some of this work before, and we want to just broaden the scope a little bit. Again, here the main contribution is focused on understanding of the impact and or mitigation strategies associated with the combustion process involved. So there will be, it is likely to be some overlap between the colloquia. And before we need to sort of decide or confirm which category classification of your submission do match. But the important thing is you need to pick the colloquium where you think this paper has provided most innovation and impact. That's the real decision making. Where do you think this paper had the most innovation and impact among all these 13 colloquia that we have listed, and taking in mind what I've said before about is this application, is this fundamentals, are these tools or impact and mitigation. And here I provide some examples. Is the paper reporting new combustion model, or it reports new results using established models? Is the paper focused on NOx, SOx and soot kinetics, for example, or the paper reports results on a mitigation or control strategy? So these are different things. Is the paper focused on detonation fundamentals, or it reports on a pulse detonation engine experiments or model? So again, there can be a mix between them, but ask yourself where is the most contribution, innovation, impact this paper is making. It's just a quick advice regarding the new requested information. When you submit your paper, we are going to ask you about novelty and significance. This is going to help us in the initial review to determine, you tell us where do you feel this paper has most novelty and significance. We're giving you sort of 50 words to express it, or maximum 150, but don't just cut and paste from your conclusions. We want it to be really genuine, saying this is the first time ever that this has been done. This is really groundbreaking. This is important. This have this contribution. This is why it's significant. This is the novelty. And my strong advice, put it in dot points, because it's easier then to follow each one of the points that you are making in your argument. And indication and justification of author's preference mode of paper presentation. We're giving you sort of what are the criteria we're going to use. Tell us why you picked OPP or PPP, and we'll take that into considerations when making our decision. Finally, these are the useful links of where you're going to get most information. It's straightforward, it is quite detailed, and you should be able to get all what you need from these links in there. And if you still have some questions, please write to the office at combustioninstitute.org, and they should be able to answer any questions that you may have. And if they have something that is different, I'm sure they will send it to us and we will answer it as well. So thank you for your listening, and I hope that we'll see as many of your papers as possible.